Good morning. This little mini TV studio is a bizarre rig. It's a laptop on a couple of coffee table books, and behind that, another laptop for stuff. All right, so you'll see I'm alone this morning. Alexa has an appointment. She might even come in during the live stream, which if that happens, we'll have to give it the whole talk show treatment. So for those of you watching at home or on your mobile device, when she comes in, just, give her a round of applause. She'll at least feel it. All right, so we didn't get a chance last night talking about Broadway the Hard Way, this awesome Frank Zappa album recorded and released in 1988, the year after I was born, the year before Alexa was born, and the year of a major presidential election and just a big election in general. Now, we talked for about 45 minutes and we covered most of this awesome double album, which features a big band lineup, and I like to give credit where credit is due. I didn't run through the list of names last night. So Frank Zappa, Ike Willis, Mike Keneally, Bobby Martin, Ed Mann, Walt Fowler, Bruce Fowler, Paul Carman, Albert Wing, Kurt McGettrick, Scott Tunis, Chad Wackerman, and Eric Buxton, who is the guest vocalist on Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk. Thanks for indulging my spectral tendencies. Now, we talked for 45 minutes. This is a politically charged album. This might actually be the most politically charged live album since Kick Out the Jams, which came out 20 years prior. Any MC5 fans out there? It's interesting. Frank had sort of this punk mentality about him. He was anti-establishment, but he also positioned himself as counterculture, yet he was never a fan of the punk movement itself. There's something to be said there. All right, I'm a bit scatterbrained. It's 11:20. We were out late. It happens. So, Frank and religion. Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk. Through the 1980s, televangelists became a force to be reckoned with politically. Frank explained this process in a 1989 interview with Larry King, where he said that these televangelists, especially small-time ones, they could buy airtime, and as a result, create a situation where the broadcaster appreciates the revenue and the viewership and the advertising, and even if they disagree with that person's message, they might essentially be held hostage. So televangelists, the brand of Christianity that they paint is not the teachings of Jesus Christ. It's this weird, money-obsessed, world-centered faith where it is about stockpiling your wealth. And it is about screwing other people over and taking care of your needs first before you tend to those in greater need than your own self. And that's the philosophy today of a guy like Joel Osteen. Televangelists haven't gone away. We've simply normalized them. And there are now so many of them operating on so many different levels. Joel Osteen gets 1 million viewers a day or whatever. You get a guy like Joey Gibson here in the Pacific Northwest, who he's got a small cadre of followers and they're dumber than he is. But what matters is that these are fake Christians going out and engaging in political activism and championing social causes in the name of God, in the name of religion, in the name of promoting a better society, a better, freer, utopian world. And what they wanted in 1988, and what they want now, and it's scary to me because they have political power now. 30 years ago, Frank was warning about the consequences of these assholes running for office. We have lived through at least 29 years of that. Certainly longer. Now, Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk is about Pat Robertson. Pat Robertson is the host of the 700 Club, Still around. These gremlins make it well into their 90s, whereas Lennon gets popped at 40. Frank Zappa doesn't make it to 55. Harrison doesn't make it to 60. This is a guy who, on his television program, which is a religious broadcast, has prayed for the assassination of world leaders, claims to not be a faith healer, but on his show has prayed the gay away and prayed headaches away and prayed away hurricanes. And what we're warned about in Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk is a pretty terrifying glimpse of the world. It starts funny. That's the strange thing to me about this song is as a comedy number at first, it introduces the idea of these televangelists getting involved in money scandals. Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, they had a show called, I think, Praise the Lord, something like that. And I don't know the full details, but they were involved in some scandal with money. I don't know if there's a sex scandal too. Jimmy Swaggart, another televangelist, was embroiled in a sex scandal. And these dudes were moralists. These are people who would preach to their congregations about adulterers and blasphemers and gays being the reason that we had droughts. And that these are the people who should all be locked up and be taken care of, you know? And in Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk, there are all these references about these people having white bed sheets in their closets. And, you know, the truth of the matter is, I love Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk. I first heard it in 2002, my freshman year of high school, near the end of it, just months after 9/11. And I recognized then at 14, 15, what a role religion was playing in all of these conversations, and that it seemed that we were, at the time, at war with Islam. And I just thought, well, what did they ever do to us? That was my first thought. And then it turned into, well, to do something like that, they'd have to be pretty mad. So what did we do to them? And that was the beginning of my education outside of the classroom, outside of what's in those textbooks. Now, it amused me to hear a song like Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk. I grew up in a town where religious diversity is Catholics and Lutherans dining in the same section at Applebee's. I'm not from a diverse part of the world. There's not rural Indiana. There's not great diversity of thought, let alone diversity of people in that region. And homogeneity can be toxic. In these small, close-knit communities, it's not abnormal to go into a church where you have one person who thinks Jesus Christ is a way, not the way, and then sitting right next to them in their pew is someone who thinks the earth is 5,000 years old. And rather than sit down and give that person a science lesson or call a psychiatrist, it's just live and let live. That's one of my problems with, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So growing up in this white bread, red state, small town, songs like Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk and Frank's other, I don't want to call them anti-religious, but his songs calling out the hypocrisy of organized religion and its leaders, those songs were a breath of fresh air to me, in the same way that anarchy in the UK had been a year or two before when I was a little younger, or the Kinks introducing me to the idea of socialism and the people sticking together through adverse circumstances. And it gave me hope to know that there were people out there who weren't bound by these toxic ideas that were surrounding me. And there certainly was racism, homophobia, anti-Muslim sentiments in my town, anti-Semitism for sure. And none of that ever made sense to me, ever. You evaluate a person on their individual merits. You can't make blanket statements about an entire group, except when you have these religious communities of ditto heads who follow a dangerous leader like Pat Robertson, or Joel Osteen, or Joey Gibson. Never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups. I understand the anti-religious sentiment that permeates conversations on the left now. You're watching this channel, you see in my username, I am an ordained minister, trained in Vedic traditions, but also raised Christian, and familiar with other Sikh philosophy, Muslim philosophy. So I bill myself as an interfaith spiritual person. And I've read my fair share of scripture. So did Frank. That's the point I'm getting to here. In Barry Miles's book, he talks about Frank going to the library and educating himself. Exactly the thing he asked his listeners to do on his first album, Freak Out, which opens with an anti-school song. And he says, if you have any real guts, drop out and go educate yourself at the library. Frank stayed in school, although he did drop out of college. But it's known that he was reading books on philosophy, ancient philosophy, not just contemporary religion, but Zoroastrianism. And in his music, there are ideas that seem a bit non-mainstream, but are found in other religious thoughts. There's an interview he gave in 1981 on CNN's The Freeman Report. This was a long time ago. CNN actually reported news for a few years. And in the interview, it's a wonderful interview. It goes like an hour long. Frank says, I am a religious person. That tends to go against the general grain of what people had in mind about him, given the lyrical content of some of his tunes, including Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk, which seems anti-religious. It's anti-religious hypocrisy. It's still early and I'm losing my train of thought. But I think I'll just wrap this up real fast. It's 11:30. These songs aren't as funny to me as they used to be. And they're not as uplifting as they used to be. To be surrounded by it in a small town, and then to hear this, often with headphones on late at night, it makes me think of those resistance types in East Europe where rock music was illegal and all those songs about freedom speaking to them. Same thing growing up in fascist Indiana. Hearing stuff like The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing, Dumb All Over, and maybe even a little ugly on the side. And to look at all those chumps at my church who clearly did not read what is in the Bible and ignore what is in the red letters in their copy of the Bible about helping the poor, about serving the least among you, about the golden rule, and talking about killing Muslims and the Mexicans who were ruining the small town I grew up in and all that shit. Those people are horrible. So to hear a song like Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk, I could think of those people and go, all right, they run the show here, but there is a higher power. And that higher power will take them to account for their actions. At some point, you do have to just engage and have faith. And also to know that you're not wrong. Much of that sentiment of, okay, but I'm not wrong, pervades Frank during this time. So I said that Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk is largely a comedy number. About halfway through, there's a key change and a tempo shift, and it gets serious. There's almost a desperation that he wants to be sure. Lyrically, he even says so to make sure that his point is carried to the listener and imparted properly. Surely I have failed somehow, and Jesus will think I'm a jerk, is what he says near the end of the song. But the warning is these religious types running for office. We already had that with Bush, W. Bush, backed by Pat Robertson. What's his name? Falwell, the guy who said that gays caused 9/11. The hardest thing for me with this is near the end, they're talking about future elections. When it will eventually happen that some fascist anti-pope runs for president and wins. And Frank says, 92? There's a little musical cue. And then 96? Frank didn't live to see 1996. And his voice was much missed in the years following his passing as neoliberalism began to take over. That was the Democrats' way of outflanking Reagan. They gave us the Clintons. Now, I have here Barry Miles's book, Frank Zappa in His Own Words. It's a compilation of quotations, speeches. This is from 1989. Zappa, accompanied by his entire family, gave a speech at a pro-choice rally at Rancho Park in LA, attended by over 100,000 people. So, I'm not a nationalist at all, and the present rhetoric surrounding that word is further driving me away from ever embracing that title, ever. So bear with me as I read Frank's words. I mean, it's right here on the cover. He's wearing the Uncle Sam hat. He did believe in the potential of this country, but he also saw it being taken over by people intent on destroying it. Hello, can you hear me? I will be brief. This should not be seen as a matter only affecting women's rights. The matter of choice is something basic to being an American. When someone is anti-choice, they are anti-American. It should be clear from recent events that the enemy that America must face is not the communists over there. It's those deranged right-wing lunatics right here in America. Make no mistake about this. Those people you see on the freeway with the fish on the back of the car, that's the enemy. And if you lose this one, you lose America. This is not just about abortion. You can't let these lunatics change the way things work around here. I hope that everyone who is here today is registered, presuming to vote, and apply that litmus test to any candidate that asks for your vote. Are you pro-choice? Not just about abortion, but do you want to leave America as a place where you can have a choice? Where you can decide what you want to do with your life? Get the government out of your bedroom, out of your underpants, and put them back to work where they belong. I understand they are doing voter registration here today. Please take advantage of that, and don't be afraid to stand up to the people with the fish on the back of the car. Now, I've been thinking of doing this for quite some time, and I don't know whether it is really the right time and place to do it, but I'm going to take a chance. I would like to lead you all in a prayer, because when you get right down to it, anybody can pray. Now, all those other guys are always praying, so let's pray just for a minute. Repeat after me. Dear sweet Jesus, don't listen to those other guys. They are not Christians. They are practicing witchcraft. Not long ago, they prayed to you and demanded the death of a Supreme Court justice. What's that got to do with Christianity, huh? Okay, Jesus, we know you're listening to us because we are the good guys. Thank you very much, and good night. That mentality of knowing you're right, despite mass opposition, is probably Frank Zappa's most defining characteristic as a polemicist, as a songwriter, as a philosopher, as a thinker. And the fact that he led a group of over 100,000 people in a public prayer also suggests he wasn't necessarily a full-blown atheist. Um, I talked to a few of his band members when I was doing research on Frank for my master's and then for a book chapter I did on him. And religion came up. I wrote about the album You Are What You Is, which features a couple of pretty heavy comments on religious hypocrisy, televangelism, and the intersection of entertainment, capitalism, and the church. And the guy I interviewed the most was Arthur Barrow. He played bass with Frank from 78 to 81 and then stuck around for a few extra years to help rehearse the bands and stuff. But he said, in terms of religiosity, he's a Texan, so he's got a sometimes amusing way of saying things. And he says, well, it's not like we were praying before every concert or anything, but it came up. And Ray White, who is a fantastic singer. He played with Frank from 77 throughout the 80s, off and on. Wonderful singer. He's a great voice. You'll hear him a lot on You Are What You Is, actually. And Art Barrow said that Ray White was, and he's still around, he still is, a devout Baptist. And he saw the lyrics to The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing and told Frank he wasn't comfortable singing it. And Frank pulled him aside and said, listen, man, this is not about Jesus Christ. This isn't about sincerity. This is me calling out hypocrites. I understand if you don't want to sing it, but I think it's important to get a message out there, warning people to come to their own conclusions. And after that, there was never an issue. The meek shall inherit nothing is defined by this gorgeous 3-part harmony. And this wonderful slide guitar part. It's like an old gospel country tune. It's neat. But the lyrics. Some take the Bible for what it's worth when it says that the meek shall inherit the earth. Well, I heard that some sheik has bought New Jersey last week, and you suckers ain't getting nothing. Is Hari Rama really wrong if you wander around with a napkin on, with a bell on a stick, and your hair is all gone? The geek shall inherit nothing. You say your life's a bum deal and you're up against the wall. Well, people, you ain't even got no kind of deal at all. Because what they do in Washington, they just take care of number one. And number one ain't you. You ain't even number two. Those Jesus freaks, well, they're friendly, but the shit they believe has got their minds all shut. And they don't even care when the church takes a cut. Ain't it bleak when you've got so much nothing? So what do? Hey, eat that pork, eat that ham. Laugh till you choke on Billy Graham, Moses, Aaron, and Abraham. It's all a waste of time, and it's your ass that's on the line. Do what you wanna, do what you will. Just don't mess up your neighbor's thrill. And when you pay your bill, kindly leave a little tip and help the next poor sucker on his one-way trip. Those are Frank's lyrics to The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing. With some slight modifications, he was able to get away with performing that on Saturday Night Live 30 years ago, way back when that show was relevant, good, funny, and subversive. Now, to get back to it, all of Frank's stuff about religion, it's not as funny anymore because what he was warning against, that these assholes would continue to curry favor with politicians, to have a continued media presence, to continue deceiving the public. And keep in mind, Jimmy Swaggart and Jim Bakker, they didn't go away. If anything, America loves a comeback story. Repentance is written into the Christian faith as this thing you can just keep doing over and over and over again. The goal is to be a good person the first time, not to keep making the same mistake over and over again, and then to the point that it just seems that you're getting away with it just to get away with it. Now, I'm not talking about the individual, like those of us who are watching this video. I'm talking about people in positions of power. They are beholden to higher standards of behavior. They are role models. People see them and are inspired by them. They hear their words and they think upon them. They ruminate on them. There is a responsibility, especially for people who claim to be religious leaders, to hold themselves to a higher standard as representatives of the chief upstairs. There is a higher calling to be a good person, and it's not just about moralism. It's about not doing harm. And that's at the core of these gentlemen's improprieties, is that it caused harm. They weren't in open relationships. They were stealing money from their parishioners and misusing funds. They were living the high life, while many of their viewers who are working class Americans were separating themselves from their money, thinking it was going to feed children or to spread the gospel, to promote the message of Jesus, which, stripped away of St. Paul's anti-Semitism, stripped away from the contradictions that are throughout, you only take what's in the red letters from the Bible, you have an excellent text. You have a philosophy that is anti-capitalist. You have a philosophy that demands honesty and transparency, that calls out hypocrisy among leadership. And Jesus Christ was an anarchist, friends. He believed in mutual aid, solidarity, and direct action. He wasn't a capitalist engaged in conspicuous consumption. He didn't speak in a football arena and talk about how you have to pray for wealth. He was talking about how it's hard for rich people to get enlightenment, to enter the kingdom of heaven. I don't hear atheism in Frank Zappa's lyrics because his crusade was against immorality among leadership, positing moralism. Do as I say, not as I do. I've gone on for almost 30 minutes here. Religion is something that Frank wrote about periodically. I don't know if he could quite fill up a CD with it, but when he did, the lyrics are often quite dense. If you've heard Dumb All Over from 1981's You Are What You Is, phenomenal track. It goes and goes and goes. It is a block of words. It's 6.5 minutes of words. And he delivers it almost in a rap-like style. Whoever we are, wherever we're from, we should have noticed by now our behavior is dumb. And if our chances are expected to improve, it's going to take a lot more than trying to remove the other race or the other whatever from the face of the planet altogether. You can hear the desperation in his voice to get that message across. And then here also with Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk, which closes the Broadway the Hard Way album. Frank's fear of religious totalitarianism is in the sleeve of Joe's Garage, the rock opera that imagines a world where rock music is made illegal. And he says in the liner notes, if it seems that bizarre to you, consider this. It just happened in Iran. That was 1979, and public opinion about the Islamic Republic has shifted a bit. But it's throughout. There's references to the church in his early works. Pigs and ponies is an oft-referred to metaphor around the time of Lumpy Gravy. And it's been deduced that pigs and ponies is a reference to cops and the church. Now, Frank's instrumental works are also inspired by this vision of a fascist, theocratic America with pollution in the waterways and the air. It colors his classical works. It's a big motif on Civilization Phase 3, which is a mix of classical music, avant-garde soundscapes, dialogue recorded inside a piano. It sounds really neat. I don't want to start babbling, but I feel like I need a concluding argument here. These songs need to be revisited by the present generation. We are missing a significant component in our protest movement, in the real resistance, not this hashtag Mick resistance bullshit, where millionaires are leading working class people into situations of mass arrest. I'm looking at you, the Poor People's Campaign. But I'm talking about the actual resistance of going back into the past, We don't have a good protest movement. We don't have good protest music in this modern resistance. We don't have another Zappa. We don't have another John Lennon. Bob Dylan's filling up stadiums and playing his cowboy music. He's not singing about nuclear war anymore, and he hasn't for 40 years. Remember that. He's in the music business. Where are all our heroes? We got to turn back to the past and revisit these discussions, these songs. And Frank wasn't the only one who warned about this. John Lennon, as a protest writer, Funkadelic, there's songs there warning about what the world could become and how to avoid it by creating a world centered around love. It's not crazy to think that it's possible. A better world is possible. That's what it's all about. That's why people are out in the streets. That's why people are doing what they're doing, sticking their fist in the air, regardless of what side. They want a better world. Of course, left is actually right, and I mean that in a sense like they're correct. There are no divisions. People are people. It shouldn't be about identity, and it shouldn't even be about what ism you belong to. Goodness is goodness in any form. And the only way we can fight it is by uniting together and being good in our fight against wickedness. I'll wrap up with some words from the good book. We have these worldly warnings from Frank from 30 years back. 1988, those songs were recorded. And then to go further back to 81, 78, 67. These are old tracks. We're turning to history now at this point. But now let's turn to antiquity. And there's a similar message here. Now hear from me of the demonic. This is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16. I'm starting at verse 7. Those who are demonic do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. They say that this world is unreal, that there is no foundation, and that there is no God in control. It is produced of sex desire and has no cause other than lust. Following such conclusions, the demonic, who are lost to themselves and who have no intelligence, engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. The demonic, taking shelter of insatiable lust, pride, and false prestige, and being thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. They believe that to gratify the senses unto the end of life is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, there is no end to their anxiety. Being bound by hundreds and thousands of desires, by lust, by anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. The demonic person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my designs. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemy will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices, give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. Thus perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusions, one becomes too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and falls down into hell. That text is 5,000 years old. It's nothing new. The world is in the hands of people who don't care about other people. They only care about themselves. They care about their own self-preservation, and they care about maintaining their power, staying at the top of the heap, enjoying a life centered around sense gratification. Not love, not joy, not happiness, but in making themselves feel good. Whether it's with gold or 20 Bentleys, a helipad, running for president, being a CEO, being Jeff Bezos. It's about anyone in power. Never forget that. 35 minutes seems like a fair length. This is not a singular visit to this subject. Like I said earlier in the video, you've probably seen in the name of my channel, Reverend. I am a pastor, an interfaith minister. The intersection of theology, contemporary politics, pop culture, we need to examine that. There are relevant messages for us. Now, I'm going to wind down now. Today in downtown Portland, there's a planned Gilets Jaunes protest with folks on the left and folks on the right. I'm not sure how it's going to go down, but as always, just remember, patriot prayer is neither patriotic nor prayerful. And solidarity to my comrades in the streets today. Be safe, have fun, and play nice. All right. Peace. Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters, and everyone else in between.